Hey, Abacus family. Welcome to Trust Talks. I'm Tony Patino. What does trust mean to you? Today, we have the pleasure of talking with two really special guests. Episode 2 is about the one thing that lives underneath trust. It's the engine underneath execution. It's underneath everything we do, and it's called belief. Not the kind of belief that shows up after the results come in. I'm talking about the kind that shows up when you can't see where the road goes, the kind that makes you come back after you've been away for a while, the kind that says, I know what this can become even before it does. Again, I have two special guests with me today, and I say that with real meaning, not because they're impressive on paper, because they really are, but because their stories are exactly what this podcast was built to tell. Got Frank Iserhold, our general manager for plumbing in Houston, and I've got the pleasure of having Mike Shore, our general manager for plumbing in Austin, here with us today. Fantastic guests, and I look forward to talking with them. We're here with our Trust Talks. I have the pleasure of having these two gentlemen on the first episode. Both, worked with both of these guys for enough since I've been here. I'm happy to have both of them on. And today we're going to talk about belief. We're going to talk about their story, what's got them here to this point in their role with Abacus. I've got some questions for them. But first, let me introduce Frank Iserhold, our general manager for the Houston Plumbing Division. Frank, welcome to the show. First episode out the gate, so you get the chance to talk with everybody today.
Thank you, Tony, to give us the opportunity to be the icebreaker. Me and Mike, we're going to tear it apart and do a good job. So here we go.
Good deal. Now, and also joining in newly to the Austin office, but spent a number of years here with Abacus, is Mike Shore, our division manager for plumbing in our Austin team. So Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and be a part of the first podcast. So thank you, Tony.
Absolutely. Well, good deal. So guys, like I said, we've kind of gone over a few things here, but the RO mantra this year is about growth, right? Ready, set, grow. And we talked about a few things that kind of make up what does that mean? How do we get here? And the first step is in growing is having a belief of growth, having a belief mindset, or that. And so I really want to hear from you guys what Frank, you've got both of you have phenomenal stories. First of all, let's start there. But Frank, tell us a little bit about your journey, starting as an apprentice, and just walk us through your almost 20 years here with us.
So I got out of the Marine Corps in like 2004. It's kind of right after 9/11 and all that stuff happened. Nobody really gave me opportunity. I was cutting grass for a living for a landscape company, and got the opportunity to kind of work for the city of Tomball doing utility work. And from there, my wife's cousin, his boyfriend at the time, was working at Abacus as a plumber. Mike probably knows him, Ricky Mills. And he said, hey, Frank, hey, they're hiring for apprentices over at Abacus. You want to come aboard? It was a good opportunity for me. I came on board, sat down with Alan, sat down with Jim Wilburn, and they offered me a position getting paid less than I was getting paid for the city of Tomball. So at the city, I was getting paid $10 an hour. Came on board at Abacus, we're getting paid $9 an hour, with the promise that, obviously I'd get overtime and everything else, and I'd have enough of a livelihood to support my family. And then from there, it just took off, right? I just worked, kept my head down, and believed in the system that Alan and Jim kind of entrusted with me and made me get my license and made it as fruitful as it has been. I never thought that I'd be in the position that I am right now, because I was always been a blue collar worker, turning wrenches, swinging a hammer and stuff like that. And here I am 22 years later after plumbing, on top of the plumbing division manager for the Houston branch. It's an amazing journey, to be honest with you.
So Frank, did you ever, day one when you got here and, where you're at today, 2026, did you ever see that? Did you ever see that? Like, hey man, one day I'm going to run this whole plumbing group or plumbing, division, or just, what was that? What was in your mindset at 22 years ago?
Man, to be honest with you, I was just trying to survive, right? Like I got out of the Marine Corps. I was married, had 2 daughters. Getting paid $10 an hour is kind of tough. So I'd only get 40 hours a week working for the city. So coming here gave me an opportunity to feed my family, and it's been very fruitful. College was never in my DNA. I was never a guy that I was better at getting out of school than actually going to school. I had the opportunity to work, and I've always been a hard worker. My dad instilled that in me, and when I got here, I had the opportunity to shine, right? And Alan and Jim and all the guys that were here before me saw how I wasn't just a one-trick pony. I could do a lot of different things. So they gave me the opportunity, and they gave me the area to growth, and they believed in me and entrusted in me and developed me to who I am today, to be honest with you. But absolutely, by no means that I think 22 years later, me and Mike, when I first started here, or when Mike first started here, I think I was a second-year apprentice at the time, or maybe barely early on, right? So I didn't know crap. And I was just trying to maintain, trying to feed my family. That's all it was, is just trying to stay alive, brother.
Yep. So is it safe to say that Alan was and Jim were maybe the first people that really truly believed in you here? And how did that help you shape you kind of what as you went along as a technician and beyond that?
Yeah, a lot of early on stuff, like when Abacus first started up, Mike can contest to this too. We sat in a room with 4 brown folding tables with metal chairs around it, and they had a VHS monitor that they pushed in the corner. And every meeting, they would have Terry Nicholson have an inspirational speech on how to promote and how to sell and how to pitch your items and how to just be a better salesman for your plumbing, you know. And we'd sit in that table, and like for the most part, guys would kind of roll ideas off of one another, right? And it became a think tank for Abacus on how we can improve ourselves. But the steps were already there, and the people that were in front of me instilled in me like, hey, just do one thing. And Alan's always told me this from day one, and Mike's heard this probably a million times too, is don't chase the money because you'll never catch it. It'll come to you. Just do what's right for the customer, and it'll be plentiful, right? You always have with the money. And to be honest with you, I've never chased money, never, even though I'd love to. I just put my head down and worked, and it's always came to me. And I've always had enough money where I could pay for my family, pay for my household, have groceries, and have a little bit of money left over. So it would take a lot for me to trust in Alan and Jim and all the guys that came before me, but they taught me the way and showed me that, you know, it may be uncomfortable from time to time, but if you just maintain the course, you'll come out on top.
Fantastic. Yep. So shifting over to Mike a little here, Mike. Now your journey with Abacus is a little different than most. I don't know if everyone knows your complete story. They know you've been back to Abacus for a number of years, but kind of just walk us through your journey. Like what got you when you first started, and you took off for a little bit and came back. Kind of tell everybody about that.
Yeah, so I mean, my plumbing career started in 2000. That was up in Wisconsin. I moved down here and I got married. Worked for a small plumbing shop locally, which allowed me to get my license transferred over. Oddly enough, I met Bob Conley. He came in to work with me on that crew, and then he transferred over to Abacus. And a few weeks later, he reached out and he was like, man, you got to come over here. And that was my introduction into Abacus. It was such an eye-opening experience. Walking in, you always worked for companies that you always felt like, maybe you saw additional potential that they could strive for. And when I walked in the door at Abacus, it was just plain as day that this place had a direction that it was going. And it just was something that struck a chord with me the minute that I met Alan, the minute that I met Jim Wilburn, when I went through my interview and came in. And just like what Frank was talking about, us sitting around this round table, this think tank of plumbers, it made you feel like you were a part of something special. And it was such a surreal experience. And, I spent close to about 4 years, almost 5 years with Abacus at the time. I left. We followed my wife's career at the time. And then I always kept up with Alan. It was one of the most difficult decisions for me to make at that time to leave, just because I knew how special this place was. I mean, you had an impact. You had a great clientele. You had a great team of guys that would have your back. And when I left and went to a company that was just closer to home for the family needs that I had at the time, it was just this huge drop off. I mean, it was a letdown. It was making the right decision for my family at the time, but it was such a culture shock to go from where we were to where this company was, which was pretty standard in the industry as far as what they did. I always kept up with Alan, whether it was a text message, a phone call. If I was in the area, I would stop in. And then when we moved back to Houston and it was an opportunity for me to return back to the plumbing field, it was the only place that I wanted to go. It was the phone call. I came back in October of 2017, and the rest was history at that point to today. Within a year, that you guys had a manager's position open up, and I wanted to challenge myself to see a different part of the industry. And we went ahead and went through that process. And, here I am now, 8 years later, the general manager at the Austin location where, we're expanding into our marketplace. And I couldn't be happier and, more challenged to be a part of this team and to have made that decision to come back. And now Frank talked about being a second year apprentice, and for 2 years, Frank was my boss, and no problems. I love that. But that's the great part about this place is you get to see people that answer the call, and they're the ones that get to elevate and take on that new responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, you obviously a lot of cool stuff there. A lot of um, both of you saw something in the company early on that really just you kind of had like you gravitated toward, right? You knew something was special going on here, and for Mike, this is what at the second chapter, coming back in 2017. Now you came back fall of 2017, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's right. So we had just had, what was it, Harvey, Hurricane Harvey. We had just moved into this new building, a lot going on, craziness. So what did the second chapter require from you that maybe the first chapter didn't?
Well, obviously, the operational size of the company had changed so much. I mean, I left, it was in, I think it was either the original building or the second building at that time. And now it's in a 60,000 square foot facility. And just, they had added the two trades, HVAC and electrical, and all of the office staff that came back with that. What was interesting was all these people had heard, and I don't know if it was like this way for you, Frank, but it's like there's the nostalgia to somebody that left and then was coming back. And it was interesting to see that because I had been away from plumbing for a number of years. And, to see and feel people that were like, oh my God, like we heard that you're this special guy and all these things. And, and I'm like, hey, I'm just the guy coming back to work. But it, it was answering that call and understanding that the expectation is not to just be this same person indefinitely. This place always challenges you to step up. And I had no idea that I was going to be interested in the management role until the opportunity came up. And I can remember like it was yesterday, my first day as a manager, I took a picture of my work boots and my dress boots on the countertop. And it was like, this was a new chapter and it was the transition to do that. So, but it was, for me, it was challenging because I was a stay at home dad at the time before I came back. There were a lot of social barriers that I had to go through. Alan put me right into, I think in the first week, I got my uniforms and I was in front of a camera just like I am right now, doing this big interview that still plays on up in the front of the office. And that was kind of a mind altering moment for me about, hey, like, I remember how this place likes to challenge you. And, but you answer that call and you go forward with it. Again, it's not an easy place to work for. There's a high expectation, but you accept that and you grow and you move through it. So
No, that's phenomenal stuff. So both of you guys, I'm going to ask kind of both of you a similar question around belief, because both of you had a belief in yourself before anybody else believed in you, right? You guys, and even when, like Frank, I asked you earlier, hey, was Alan and Jim kind of the first people that really you felt believed in you? Mike, I know you feel the same way. Alan believed in you. I believed in you in terms of what we could see in the potential. But talk to me a little bit about belief. How has it helped shape you as a through your journey, your years here at Abacus? How's having the right belief mindset gotten you through all of the different obstacles? And both of you kind of said it in your own way. You've been challenged along the way. I know this podcast is somewhat challenging, not I would say challenging, but different for both of you, right? Neither one of you have done a podcast before.
no.
And but it's getting, it's stepping out on that skinny branch and that's where the best fruit is, right? It's doing something that makes you a little uncomfortable. Tell her, like, can you just I'll start with Frank. Just talk to us about belief and how that's helped you.
Believe. So that's a pretty strong word. I think it goes along well with trust, right? You got to believe and trust in somebody. And for me, it was, when I came to the organization years ago, when I stepped on the first doorstep over there off of Todd Road where Abacus first started, right? And started that journey. I didn't believe I was going to be a journeyman plumber. I was just looking for a paycheck at that time, right? And then the more I sat in the room with all the guys that were plumbers and licenses and everything along, it made me start believing that, hey, this isn't just a job, it's a career path, right? Like I have opportunity to make a really good living for myself and for my family. And everybody in that room would challenge you. And it wasn't just a challenge based on numbers, is challenging based on craftsmanship for the most part, right? And everybody was so proud of the work and so proud of the work that you put in and that you went back and, oh, look this guy did. You believed every day when you stepped on that doorstep at Todd Road, you're making a difference in the plumbing industry and you're setting trends that everybody else was trying to be like us. So I was at the right place. And the first time I really kind of believed in myself was kind of when y'all gave me the opportunity to be a manager, right? Like Ken was getting out of the industry doing the plumbing, the commercial plumbing stuff, right? And they're like, I know, Frank, whatever you do, you're going to make the right decision. You've always been doing it for a year in and year out. You look after the customer. You make sure the customer is taken care of. You care about your coworkers. Like, you just always seem to have that at front of mind. You're not caring about yourself, but you're caring about everybody else. So that's kind of where my belief is. Y'all gave me a management role, which I had one at another company prior to this, but it was different here when you came back into that doorstep. Like Mike said, I went from stepping on the doorstep at Todd Road to landing back at the doorstep off of Kendrick Plaza, right, 2 years later. And when I walked in, it was, for me, it took a lot of pride to come back, which is maybe a little different for Mike because we left on different terms. But I felt like everybody was watching you, right? Like, this guy left the organization. Why is he coming back? What does he have? So I put a chip on my shoulder. So I do like I do with everything else. I'm going to throw it on my back and I'm going to run with it. I'm going to show you what this old timer could do. And that's what I've done my whole career is outwork and outperform everybody else. And I know no matter whatever anybody says, that realistically, you may be smarter than me, you may be tougher than me, but I promise you, you'll never outwork me. And that's been something that I've done my whole life, starting with my dad, starting with Abacus, starting with everybody else. Is you may be better, but you won't ever outwork me because you won't see me ever quit.
Great stuff there, Frank. And now, so Mike, I mean, belief had to have a big deal for you as well, right? Believing, coming in two different stints for yourself, and then even as you're in your journey as a manager, coming in as a service manager, and then kind of seeing, talk to us a little bit about belief and how that's impacted you and in your journey to where you are today.
Well, first and foremost, you got to have a little bit of belief in yourself, to be able to accept these challenges that come along the way. I mean, when I came back, like I said, the management role wasn't even on the radar. It was just getting fully immersed back in, a company that I had left and, beginning that process. And then the opportunity came up, and it was nothing that was handed to me. I mean, you guys interviewed people internally in the company. You interviewed people that were external in the company. But one of the things that I liked about it was I had a talk with Tom Shanks right after I came on as a manager, and there was obviously dialogue between him and Eddie as well about who they wanted to bring in, and they believed in me. And that's one of those things that this company has always thrived on. Frank talked about it where, we had the round table of the plumbers in the beginning, and you may not have believed in yourself as much as what everybody else did, but that interaction with those guys helped build that. And it built confidence in you. And you knew that if you needed help with something or had a misunderstanding or needed knowledge, you could ask that from the peers and people around you. And the company is still that way to today. And my journey, it's been very interesting because there's like pre-COVID, COVID, and then post-COVID, and there were three completely different management styles that you had to learn because the industry has changed so much over those three segments. And, you just have to have that belief in yourself that you can overcome whatever it is that's thrown your way. And again, one of the best lessons that I had with that was Tom Shanks. And I remember I was going into my first weekend of being on call, and that's an interesting feeling because it's like the keys to the kingdom are handed to you for 2 days or 3 days, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, and everything stops with you. And Tom was getting ready to leave the office, and he said, just collect as much information as you can, make a decision, and stick with it, and he walked out and everybody had the belief in me that I was going to be able to handle that. And I had no idea going into the weekend how that was all going to play out. But you build on that every single day, week, month, as that rotation goes forward. You cultivate that environment and you understand that, this company has always had a clear direction. And, I love the slogan on the wall I'm pointing behind me, but it's in the break room behind me is our minimum standard is excellence. And it's that belief in where we are and that we can push to achieve that and always do better. And that's been one of the things that's always motivated me here, to take the time to train people, to listen to people, to understand and take feedback, on myself. But yeah, the belief side of things here is it will magnify that in you if you get on board with and understand the core values and where this company wants to take you and the people around you.
So and Mike, just to add on to that, is there a goal you're still working towards right now? Is there something that, how does and what does belief look like at this stage in your career?
Well, I mean, I think you always challenge yourself. Like I look at you, Tony. I mean, when I came in, you were a division manager, okay, and now you're running the company, and you've had a series of steps that you've gone through. I mean, I want to continue my career in that same pathway, and I have an opportunity for that here in Austin. Just being a few months into the general manager's role, there's so much more information now that I have to process and do. I have to allow for that saturation time. I've already been in contact with Frank. We're sharing, and he's sending me links and things on how to get used to the P&L and to do that. And there's that's always been one thing that's been a hard part, I think, for somebody coming out of the field, is to get into reading numbers and understanding the business metrics. But you can't help but be inspired by looking at your journey, Tony, and then even Alan's as well. To be I would call him a first generation immigrant, and he's a part of this massive company now, and has a wonderful golden parachute, and is enjoying the success. And I'm not going to lie and say that I would like to achieve something like that in my life as well. So where that path definitively goes, it's not 100% clear, but I know that what I'm doing right now is leading me that way. So I think that's the best way that I can answer that. I'm so new in my position that there's a lot that I have to learn, and I'm focused on that right now and making sure that I make a deep impact here in the Austin location.
Fantastic, man. And it's we've all been blessed to be in a situation when we got involved in this organization, and you guys obviously have been here longer than I have. But when just to add in a little bit, just to see it from when I got here in 2017, and we were at the Vickery building, and it felt like we were just like busting at the seams. And but if you look at it, we were probably about 125, maybe 120 employees at the time. And now fast forward almost a little over 9 years, and we're pushing 400 and mid 400s, right? So it's crazy to see how much growth we've had in every department and every phase of the business. And sometimes you step back and like, wow, we've got 60 plumbers in Houston, and Austin's in a very short period of time we've gone from no employees to well over 100 plus employees there, and what we're doing, and continue to move it into their second building, and all of the stuff that's going on. There's a lot of positive, right? And I think sometimes people get kind of lost in that a little bit. And so I'm going to kind of you know ask you guys a few more questions, and then we'll wrap it up here. But this is more for Frank. So what is what does it mean to you personally, Frank, to be the general manager of the plumbing division in Houston, knowing that you've seen the department grow from where it is? You know that this is still, well, for really for both of you guys. And then I'll probably ask you the same question, Mike, because you know how close Alan is to the plumbing group, and this is where we started. We're a plumbing company first, and then grown into the other trades. What does that responsibility look like to each of you? And I'll start with Frank.
I'd say it's heavy, right? Like it's not that you're handed somebody's legacy and you become the gatekeeper or the door holder for it, right? To uphold and carry on that strong value of quality work, quality craftsmanship, giving a five-star experience. You know, a long time ago when we first started, it was about building value, but it's a heavy weight to burden. And what I mean by that is you're constantly making sure everybody's doing the right thing at the right time for everybody. And I would say it's one of our core values, integrity, right? And Micah attests to this. It's doing the right thing when nobody's looking, right? It's one of the things that we have to do day in and day out to maintain the business. It's a very heavy burden just to carry, and what you're trying to do is not let Alan down. To me personally, Alan was like kind of a father figure because I spent more time at work than I did with my own family. And Mike will laugh because very early on in my career when I was an apprentice and when I got my license, me and another gentleman that worked here were called the Midnight Cowboys, and we would run way late into the night, and we'd be the first guys at the shop in the morning. We'd work till 2 o'clock in the morning and be at the office at 7 o'clock. And Jim and Alan would just be like, y'all ever sleep, But we were so in tune with what we were doing and so excited to come to work. Like that's what we got to carry on. So yes, it's a business to uphold. Yes, it's a licensing, plumbing, quality assurance, all those things on top. But before all that, it was a people business, bringing in the right people, having the right culture. And if you have someone toxic inside the organization, you just got to ditch them, no matter how much revenue they dump, anything like that. And that buck stops with me. And if you ever went to Alan's office, he has a plaque sitting on his desk, and it says the buck stops with me, right? And that's what it is. I have to make all the decisions to make sure that Mike's family's taken care of when he worked for me, Jose's family, everybody that's underneath me. It's not just, hey, it's a job in at 7 o'clock and I punch out at 4 o'clock and I'm out the door running because I got better things to do. It's something that we have to do to maintain everybody's livelihood for their families and hopefully for their families if they decide to join the organization as well. But to me, it's more how many lives can I touch? How many lives I can change on a daily basis?
And Mike, just if you want to add anything on to that, or is there any other perspective you want to share from your side?
Well, yeah. I mean, we now have. I mean, when we first started, we didn't necessarily have the core values other than the personal integrity side of things, and there was always that belief. And I remember Alan talking about this. There's two ways to do things: the easy way and the right way. And we always wanted to do. Obviously, the harder of that is the right way, and that is, if a customer wants something and they want it done tonight, I'm going to get it done tonight. And that there was always that mindset. And Frank talks about working late. I remember one stretch where from a Friday to a Sunday at 1 o'clock, I worked 40 hours. Well, there's 14 hours of sleep that's in there, but that's Friday, Saturday to Sunday. So I was on call and did things. And that's the expectation that we had back then was, I mean, you worked, you took care of your business, and then you were back to work the next day. But that's a great part of the evolution of the company is now we understand how bad that was back then, but that's the way the business started, right? And we have a lot of safety measures now that we've put in place to make sure that we manage those expectations and that part of the industry for everybody. The plumbing side of it to me, and I've used this reference before, we kind of feel like the first child, and you are kind of that trailblazer. And we understand the importance of the Google reviews and the perception of the company, the branding, and the expectation to always look good. I'm always putting messages out for the all tech meeting, just like what we had today, to make sure, hey, you're clean shaved. I want to see your boots clean, belts, uniforms tucked in. And I've seen guys show up and they were in a shirt. They looked at me and then they turned around, they ran and got to their locker, put their button up shirt on and went in. But that's that expectation that you have to constantly push to maintain, because if you allow an exception here and you allow another exception there, before you know it, you're no different than anybody else. And that's what I've always liked about this place and the message that it's had. But it does come with a weight on the plumbing division. I honestly feel that way because we've had to be a part of that for the long haul. And it can make it difficult sometimes when you feel like you have to say something to another manager from another trade to say, hey, man, it's like your guys don't look as good as what they should. Tennis shoes, untucked uniforms, different shirts, hair is messed up or things like that. But that's the standard that you have to push through to make sure that you're holding everybody accountable, because you can't hold one group accountable and then not another. So, and you have to have that belief that everybody has that same viewpoint.
The standard is the standard, right? And
right.
It's about having standards. And sometimes, the standards aren't, they're not for everybody. And we all understand that not everybody, it's tough to work here. So you guys have said it earlier. It's the standard is high. The expectations are high, and we can't just take anybody, right? As much as we want to hire everybody, we can't. There's a standard and everyone has to meet. So it's important for people to hear that. Got a couple more, one question for each of you guys. So Mike, if you could go back to the younger version of yourself, the one who first walked into Abacus for the very first time, what would you tell him about joining an organization like this?
That's a tough question. I mean, I honestly would say, not to steal the word here, but to have more belief in myself. My daughter's getting ready to go off to college, and she's light years ahead of me as far as school. And the one thing that I sent a message to her about that was trust the work that you've done. And I think a lot of people in our trade and in our backgrounds and things like that, I don't think they really look back and study, the years that put them in the position that they're in right now. And I would say the one thing for me would have been to trust or believe more in my abilities at that time. Just internally in myself. So that would have been probably the one thing that I would have told myself. You want to come in, you want to have an impact. But again, just to circle back to it, it would have been having more belief in myself and my abilities. And I learned that over the time period at Abacus through challenges. But that would have been the one thing that I would have told myself coming in on that first go around.
And just to add on to this, and maybe do you feel like managers, knowing what you've known, and you guys have both sat in as a young technician coming in here, wide-eyed, kind of figuring out, and it's probably more so now because there's so big and you see the shop and you see everybody. And if you come from a smaller operation, it could be overwhelming. How do you, right? And this is more, Mike, how would you tell that young technician to, what were some things that you can do to help him believe in himself or herself?
Well, I mean, it was even overwhelming for me when I came back and I knew a lot of people in the company. And to put myself in someone's shoes to not know anybody, and this is the first time they've walked into the building. I tell everybody this place is going to challenge you, okay, but just slow it down. Take it one day at a time. And I mean, there's 1,000 things that you have to learn. There's this huge expectation, but just focus on today. And if you have a question about something, ask. I mean, we're all big on communication and making sure that if there is a question, please ask about it. Because if I don't know there's a problem, I can't help you and I can't fix that. So, when somebody's new that's coming into this building, it can be daunting. But I think even just you as a manager recognizing that and having that communication with them, I really think brings a lot of that pressure down. They're like, okay, they kind of recognize that I'm just not supposed to step into this facility and have this massive impact and get to know everybody, that there's somebody here that I can confide, or is recognizing that there's a lot of intimidation when you walk in. There's a high standard, the white uniforms, people walking around. And I think when you can convey that message that you understand that it is a little bit overwhelming and to talk to you, I really think that kind of sets the tone that this place is a high expectation, but there's a big difference in the mindset and the direction that they want to manage everybody. Just having that conversation with them, I think makes a set transition a whole lot easier and enjoyable.
Good stuff. And Frank, kind of my last question for you today. And if you had 1 minute with every Abacus technician in the room right now, what's the one thing you'd want them to hear from you?
Pass. No, I'm joking. I would say breathe, right? And what I mean by that is sometimes we get overwhelmed by everything that we get going on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I can be honest with you. I start my day off trying to accomplish something, and I'll be lucky if I get that one thing accomplished by the end of the day, because we get pulled into so many different directions, and I understand that everybody has either something going on in their personal life or something going on at work or something that affects them in their mindset in a certain way. And my thing is breathe. I had a technician in my office this morning worried we were going to fire him, right? And I said, that's stupid. I said, why would we do that? We haven't even taught you the right way of doing things, much less giving you the opportunity to shine. That's on us, Abacus, to do the right thing, to teach you and show you. And if we haven't shown you the way, that's a failure on our part. So by no way are we going to let you go just because we haven't given the opportunity to make the best you out of you. So give us the time, slow down, take a deep breath, breathe, and work through the process. And if you're ever frustrated, take a break, go to the gas station, get you a soda, come back to the job site, because I will tell you, you're chasing the rabbit down the hole. And sometimes it's right in front of you is the answer. And sometimes just slowing down, taking a deep breath. It's not as big as you make it out to seem to be. I mean, it's from technicians thinking we cherry pick call for some people to favoritism and all this other stuff. And realistically, the managers don't have time to do that. Just breathe, take a deep breath. And usually what ends up happening by the end of the week, things start falling in their favor. Things end up working themselves out. Nobody's doing anything. And you realize no one's picking on me. I was just having a bad day or having a bad moment. So my thing is just breathe through it. Take a minute, reflect on yourself if you need to. And Mike was always really good about this. Is he had a special word that if you're having a bad moment and you need to call somebody and yell at them, pick it. I think it was called tippy toes, right? Mike?
Yep.
Tippy toes. There it is. Call me, say tippy toes, and just lay into me, and I'll take the chewing and make you feel better. So I would say breathe. It would be my messaging, Tony.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, there's so much going on all the time, and and as you lead people, there's personalities, right? You guys have teams. Your teams get bigger. You got more personalities to work through and different. But what we always have to remember as leaders in the business is that everyone's got a story. Everyone's got something going on in their personal life and their business life. They want, no one wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I'm going to give Frank or Mike or a difficult time today. I want to make their job harder. I want to, everybody's got something going on. And I think for us as leaders, we have to sometimes, to both of y'all's point, is slow down a little bit and just understand, ask questions, and really make sure that we're there for our people. And I think both of you, to kind of summarize what I heard today was early on in your career, someone believed in you, right? Someone believed in you and what you, even though you didn't necessarily believe in your full potential, someone else saw that potential in you. And I think us as leaders, we have really good leaders who not just see what's present, but they see out kind of what's coming next, what's around the corner. And they start believing in people before the people believe in themselves. And I think that's what ultimately builds trust is when someone believes in you and they wholeheartedly believe in your abilities, even though you're kind of questioning yourself and you're questioning whether you have that in you to be that, that the division manager, the general manager, the vice president, the president, whatever, all those things, someone believed in you. And, I think our commonality here is that Alan believed in all of us and got us to this point and helped shape us and where we were. But at the same time, it helped shape. We had to have the mindset. Everyone has to have the mindset of growth and being able to say, hey, you know what? I've given an opportunity. Well, I'm going to take full advantage of it. I'm going to continue to sharpen myself. I'm going to continue to get better. Mike, I know early on in your, coming in as a service manager, you really took and gravitated towards your public speaking and your presentations, and to the point where early on you weren't as good as you are today, but
Right.
you worked at it. You kept working at it. You kept working at it, and before you know it, you became the expert in the department on presenting, and you really gravitated towards that and enjoyed it. But I think that's a lesson for everybody when it comes to belief is that you have to push yourself to do those uncomfortable things that make you better. That's how you grow. And when we're talking about growth, you have to have the first element of that is belief. And that's kind of what this whole segment's about. And I think it's important for you guys, and I appreciate you guys sharing your story, talking a little bit about, you, and it's not always the easiest thing to do for people is to talk about yourself and what your journey is. But I think it's important for people to hear that because there's an apprentice that started with us somewhere today, this week, last week, this year, and they need to hear that story. There's a first year technician that just started with us in Houston or Austin. They need to hear your story. They need to hear that there's a career beyond what they're at today. And that's the beautiful thing about this organization is that you can do, and I tell people this all the time when we do our new hire breakfast, you can be whatever you want to be. But no matter where you started, if you came in as a lead generator or a call center rep or a dispatcher or a apprentice, it doesn't matter. It's what you want to do with the opportunity. You've gotten into the business. Now it's up to you to grow and get the next phase. We're gonna recognize that willingness and desire, but you got to put in the work. I think both of you know that, and both of you have shown that over the years. Is there's no substitute for hard work. You've got to roll up your sleeves. You've got to do the work, no matter what your title is. And title is just that. It means sometimes you're probably working harder today as a general manager of a department than you ever did as a technician. Gray hair. You probably have more gray hairs. That's there. So, but I appreciate you guys, man. I really, really do more than I probably tell you guys enough how much I appreciate what you guys do and lead the departments that you lead and share insights with me and others and continue to live up to those core values that we have. So thank you guys for your time today. Yeah, can't believe it's already been, we're done with our first episode here. So our second episode, I should say. But thank you again. Appreciate it. Look forward to the next one.
All right. Thank you, Tony.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Tony.